Hello and welcome to the Action Network UFC betting preview here exclusive on YouTube for the football season. I'm Sean Zerillo, joined today by Billy Ward to help break down UFC Paris 14 fight card. Prelim start at 11 a.m. Eastern time on Saturday, so you got to get those bets in early. 6 fight main card starting at 3 p.m. Eastern, entire card exclusive on ESPN Plus. Main event Renato Moicano against the Frenchman Benoit Saint-Denis. Saint-Denis about minus 275, best available odds. Moicano plus 240 at the peak currently. Over under of 2.5 rounds, juiced about minus 180 to the under. And my favorite bet for this fight, if you can find it, is a same game parlay involving Benoit Saint-Denis and the under 2.5 rounds. I do think that's where most of his finishing equity lies. And I generally think this fight is BSD early or Renato Moicano late. Billy can speak more to that latter angle. But in terms of this fight and what it compares most similarly to, I think for Saint-Denis, it's very similar to his fight against Thiago Moises, facing a guy who theoretically is probably a better submission grappler, theoretically probably has better technical striking, but the physicality edge for Saint-Denis is so massive here. I don't really know what Moicano is going to be able to do to keep him off of him. Even thinking about the Dustin Poirier fight, the way Saint-Denis sticky, he looked like a minus 900 favorite in the first round. First off, but fights are 5 rounds. He was dealing with staph infection in that fight. Also, the pace he set would have tired him out against virtually anybody at some point. But the biggest difference for me between Moicano and Poirier defending those positions, one, Moicano has better submission skills. So maybe he can find the back or find a way to put a submission attempt on BSD. But more importantly, in favor of Saint-Denis, I don't think Moicano has the power to earn his respect or keep him off of him. Poirier could throw haymakers, swing from the hip. I don't think Moicano is going to be able to land that knockout blow until later in the fight, until Saint-Denis is like death gassing. So I think the physicality edge, the grappling upside, the overall violence from Saint-Denis early with the elbows, the way Moicano tends to get cut open fairly quickly and like bleed very aggressively when he eats damage now. His durability has looked much better since moving up from 155 to 145. Aside from the Fiziev fight, really that was like the only fight where his shin looked awful. So I think there's a chance, he's a very tough guy. I think there's a chance Moicano, if he survives the storm, can win this fight in the 4th or 5th round on cardio, or maybe win a decision down the stretch with cardio. He's shown a lot of heart in fights, even where he's losing. But this is going to be a very difficult test for at least the first 12 and a half, 15 minutes. And I think Saint-Denis finishes him. So the same game parlay, Saint-Denis in the under 2.5 rounds at minus 115. I prefer that to the under 2.5 at minus 180. I think most of that under 2.5 is weighted towards the Saint-Denis side. Saint-Denis rounds 1 and 2, plus 105. By KO at plus 110, I projected that at minus 110. And then inside the distance at minus 185, I projected that at minus 215. I think those are all viable ways to play this fight, but my favorites are likely the same game parlay with the under 2.5, again at minus 115, or Saint-Denis in rounds 1 or 2 at plus 105. I think that's where most of his finishing upside or most of his finishing equity occurs. Billy, you're going with the Moicano live and late angle. I also would bet Moicano live probably after round 3. I think after like the 15-minute mark, maybe halfway through the fight, halfway through round 3. What's your entry point for Moicano live? Are you looking after round 2? You're looking a little bit earlier than that. And then you're maybe interested in his round 4 or 5 decision prop as well.
Yeah, I mean, this is typically a fight where I would go, okay, BSD 1, 2, 3, Moicano 4, 5 decision. I'm just worried if this makes any sense that late in the fight is going to come pretty early here because of how Saint-Denis fights. I don't know that he has 15 minutes of cardio. I don't know that he has 10 solid minutes of cardio, right? Like he's never won a decision in the UFC. I don't know if he's never won a decision, period.
He went to decision with Zaleski where he got beat up, but yes, never won a decision.
Yeah, and the staff probably had something to do with it, sure, but he is huge for the weight class, cuts a ton of weight, and he fights like he's double parked. You can't do that for that long. A 25-minute fight doesn't help him. So normally this is a fight I'd be all over Moicano 4-5 decision, or even in a 3-round fight, the 3/decision. I think this is like a generational live betting opportunity if Moicano gets through a round or two. He's been Durable's the wrong word because he gets knocked down, but he's found a way. Like he's almost doing the Homer Simpson defense. He got hurt bad by Jalen Turner,
Mhm.
did just enough on the ground. His instincts are just good enough to keep moving and not get the fight stopped. I think I can see a very similar angle here. I would argue that Moicano's a little bit undervalued on the money line just because of how important cardio is, but there's just no reason to take it because he's going to be plus 900 or something after round one or round two, assuming this fight goes the way we think it's going to go. Personally, for me, I'll be watching this one. I'm not betting anything pre-fight, just waiting to bet it live. If you want to do a same game parlay with Moicano, over 1.5, over 2.5, the 4-5 decision is plus 650. That's gonna be my prop squad pick for the week. I think if this goes even the way that we want it to for Moicano, a third round finish, a second round finish, late second round, not all that unlikely. So I don't love the 4-5 decision, not because I don't think he takes over in those rounds, but because if he takes over, it might not take that long. So looking kind of for after round one, might do a quarter unit after round one, hold another quarter unit after round two if it gets even bigger, something like that. Ideal live betting spot if you're not going to be watching or not comfortable live betting or in a state that doesn't allow it or whatever. There's a few other options, but it's Moicano late for me. Obviously, BSD early makes a lot of sense too. I'm not betting it myself. I'm picking a side here basically.
Moicano over 1.5 plus 370, over 2.5 is plus 500, and then 4-5 decision you said is plus 650. Yeah, Moicano late, BSD early. I think we're pretty much aligned on the read for that fight. I just think the physicality is going to be too much. I also think Moicano has kind of been overdue to get finished by somebody of late. Fight of the night,
That
Brendan
brings us
Allen
to
against Nassourdine Imavov. Both of these guys dialing back off of main events into a 3-round fight. And I actually think that is the determinative factor for the side I'm picking. In a 5-round fight, I'd probably like Allen. In a 3-round fight, I think I favor Imavov because Allen's biggest edge in this matchup for me is cardio. I think Imavov is the more durable fighter. I think he's the more technical striker. And I think when both guys are fresh, I think the wrestling is pretty comparable. So I'm going to take the durability across 15 minutes. I'm going to take the striking volume or the more technical striking across 15 minutes. That said, I think Allen can absolutely top time him or, find ways to make this fight extremely competitive. He's the more well-rounded fighter. I don't want to lay the money line against the guy with grappling upside. He does have the submission upside. I still think Imavov by knockout is a likelier finishing sequence than Allen by submission. That said, I like the over goes to decision here between two guys coming off of finishes, guys coming off of finishes that were more cardio oriented or late round oriented, right? Attritional finishes. I think they both have finishing skills to get one another. This is relatively, it's not binary, but it's relatively like a striker versus a grappler in terms of their base. But I think they have enough to defend in the areas where the other is stronger. So I projected this go to decision at minus 160. I saw minus 108 out there. Average price closer to minus 120. Would be happy betting the goes to decision here up to about minus 140. Billy, any thoughts on the total? I know you're on the underdog Allen in this fight, though.
Yeah, I do think over generally is probably the way to go here. Both guys fairly well rounded. I prefer the Brendan Allen side, partially because I got plus 200 earlier in the week before that line moved, which is, anchoring me to that pick a little bit. But I like him independent of that. And you're right that it's somewhat binary, but we've seen Brendan Allen, due to the strength of his grappling, use that as a deterrent. And he knocked down Bruno Silva, who's a fairly high level kickboxer before he came into the UFC. That would be middleweight Bruno Silva, not flyweight Bruno Silva, obviously, with Brendan Allen. He definitely knocked down flyweight Bruno Silva. I think it's one of those things where if we put big gloves and shin pads on him, Imavov would look like a considerably better striker. But when Imavov has to worry about the takedown, I don't know that he'll still look as dominant in the striking. Imavov's wrestling is probably a little bit better, but Allen would welcome a shot here. His jiu-jitsu is just leaps and bounds ahead. So if you're Allen, you can throw with reckless abandon, you can kick, you can open up. If you're Imavov, you have to be kind of careful because if you give those takedown opportunities, Allen's going to take it. And then it brings us to something that you mentioned on occasion where the rounds that are close, you're going to be able to score either way on the feet, I think, unless someone really pulls away. If Allen is winning a round, it's going to look very definitive because he's going to be winning around on top, and he's very active from the top. He does good damage. He sets up for submissions. I think like pretty much all rear naked chokes on his win streak, 5 of the 7 fights, all via rear naked. So it's one of those where he's going to win some clear rounds. Imavov might have some close ones. If we think it's going to decision, one guy's plus 180. We normally talk about that with like lighter women's fights, but that aspect is still at play here too. Plus, again, I'm not going to go against the superior grappler. That's just not something I'm going to do when we're getting the price we are on Allen.
Move on to our favorite underdogs of the night. We've kind of a combination of favorite underdogs and props, just a bunch of fights that we feel like talking about, but 14 fights on the card. Too many, in my opinion. My ideal card is 12 fights. I don't know. What's your ideal like number of fights on a card, Billy?
I had 13 in my head just because I like the DFS
13?
side of things too. So when it gets too small for DFS, you're all making the same lineup, and that's kind of a
Yeah,
boring way to run out.
once
14
we
is
get
too
past
strong.
12, like my brain starts getting like fuzzy with it. I don't know why I can't like handle more than 12. I'm sitting at
If I can
14.
give
It's
a
just
cop out answer, when it's not football season, my ideal card might be 13, 14, 15. When it's NFL season and I have so much more to do, I might say it's 10 or 11.
we had a card a couple weeks ago or a few weeks ago. I feel like it was 10 fights and it felt a little bit too small. I feel like 12 is the mama bear of the
Yeah.
three. So first fight I want to mention, Daria Zhleshnikova against Eileen
Jalen
Perez,
Perez.
right?
Yep.
So this fight is minus 240 to reach a decision. Minus 225, best available price. Underdog in a fight, juice to reach a decision. Zhleshnikova plus 210. I think her point spread, though, plus 3.5 at minus 120 is definitely interesting as well. The reason I'm a little worried about that, Perez has the grappling upside. I could see her getting a 10-8 round potentially, but just pretty standard Zhleshnikova dog in a fight, heavily favored to go to a decision. I also think Perez, off of her previous finishes, is a little bit overrated. I'm just gonna run through these fights, Billy, and then whatever
Yeah.
thoughts you have, happy to hear them. Daeun Jung, big underdog, plus 425 against Sadabu Sai's brother. We really don't know much about Sai in terms of like his ability to strike past, in extended striking exchanges, his ability to fight past the first round. So Jung at plus 425 definitely caught my attention. That line, there's a chance it looks way off after the fight. Going in, I have no idea. He may just get submitted in 3 seconds, but after the fact, it may look like an incredibly incorrect line. And then a couple of fights we're going to talk about a little bit more in depth. Kevin Doucette against Brian Battle and Joe Anderson Brito against William Gomez. Both French underdogs in these fights. The Battle fight interests me because he's more of a counter. He likes the counter strike, and Doucette likes the pressure. I kind of like the goes to decision in that fight. I think Battle's fights are normally a little bit crazy and chaotic, and as a result, I think the GTD is a little bit mispriced here. So I'm looking over there, but also looking at Doucette at plus 145 because he's going to be the guy in the front foot. I think the optics may favor him. And then lastly, Joe Anderson Brito against William Gomez. Brito is a powerhouse. He's extremely tough for anybody to deal with for 5 to 7 minutes. If he doesn't finish Gomez, I think Gomez potentially wins the fight down the stretch over the final second half of the fight. So Gomez live is worth a look. Gomez plus 3.5 at plus 145, I think is worth a look. Billy's going to take the opposite end and take Brito to finish. But I just think, if Brito doesn't finish, Gomez is a good live bet. And I think he probably covers the point spread. If Brito doesn't finish, I think it's very likely he covers the point spread. So Billy, any of those fights, wherever you want to start, let's start with Gomez and Joe Anderson Brito, since you've got the ITD bet on Brito.
Yeah, I am betting Brito inside the distance. That's how all of his wins happen. He comes out really hard. He swings for the fences. Underrated grappler, which is honestly what put me over the top. Got a few submissions in there. He's got knockouts on the record that are from the ground and pound. Just hyper aggressive. All of his wins inside the first 2 rounds. If he's going to win, that's probably how. And then also just kind of the pure math on that. Last I looked, the fight was minus 135 to go to a decision. His finish only money line was like minus 900. Like if there's a finish, it's going to be Brito. And you're getting plus 105 on him inside the distance when, if you math it out, he should be a slight favorite to do that.
It's actually minus 120 to inside the distance. So
yeah, I mean, it's moved around. I looked a couple days ago on that when I was coming up with that, but
I think
that's my logic.
I'm just saying, I think it's gotten more heavily juiced to end inside the
Yeah.
distance than what you mentioned. So yeah, that seems to be very logical.
If it ends in the distance more than 50% of the time, one guy is more than 90% likely to do it if it happens. you get plus money on that guy. Makes sense to me. Yeah, just gonna touch on a couple of these. I think Jung is another world-class like live betting opportunity. I don't
Mm.
want him pre-fight. He might just get starched. The athletic difference there is pretty significant, and he's gonna have to put through a lot of he's gonna be put through a lot early in the fight. Love Zelenjakova. I think Aylin Perez is a little bit overrated just on strength of competition, which has been not great for her so far. They seem to be promoting her a little bit and kind of fans of her in the UFC. She also missed weight by half a pound, which is not huge. She was close, but another factor. So I bet Zelenskova. What else did we talk about? Yeah, and then my favorite underdog is Nora Cornell at plus 180. Honestly, kind of surprised she's an underdog here at all. She's looked really good. 2-0 in the UFC, both as an underdog. Super high level striker. She was the #2 pound for pound women Muay Thai fighter in the world before she switched over to MMA. Cavalcanti, also a striker, but not with the power nor the credentials of Cornell. The reason Cornell is underdog here is because this is actually a rematch from Nora Cornell's pro debut, where she lost a decision to Cavalcanti. And just, I expect more progression from Cavalcanti there. She had no amateur MMA career. She had never been in a fight with little gloves before that. And she went to a decision against a more experienced fighter who had some MMA fights leading into that. So I think more progression from Cornell. Also, Cavalcanti took this one on short notice. So if it gets extended, I think that helps Cornell as well. Definitely more physically imposing, more power, more speed in what we expect to be a striking match. And again, if it's a close striking match and we're getting plus 180 on one side, that's the side I want to be on as well. So I think I touched on all the ones you said. I might have missed. Oh, I left out Giuseppe versus Battle.
Yeah,
Don't have a
curious about
strong
your
take
thoughts on
on
that
that.
fight.
Yeah, I kind of had Battle as a pick. I was leaning towards just seeing that you were on the other side talking me off it. I think just physically, he's got some advantages there. I don't know if they're enough to lay the juice. So seeing you on the other side, I didn't watch a ton of tape on that one. I'm happy to not make that bet. And again, when there's a 14 fight card, I wasn't able to watch tape on every single fight the way we would on these smaller cards.
Yeah, even that fight it's like minus 175 to go to decision. It feels about right. If I was getting minus 150, I might lay it. But yeah, I'm having a tough time breaking that one down. I think there's a chance they just like swing in the center of the cage quick and somebody falls, or it's a very competitive 15-minute striking match. And I'm not really interested in laying minus 175, considering I could see it going a different way.
I don't
To
know what
echo,
the line is. I don't know what the line is on this, but if it was close to his money line or not ridiculous, like the battle finish only makes a lot of sense to me. I think he's got all the finishing upside, or you could get him inside the distance at plus money. Probably doesn't win a decision in France in a close striking match anyway. So I think that would be, if I had to bet it, probably where I would go now, taking into your read on the fight as well.
yeah, battle minus 215 to finish only. Giuseppe plus
Oh.
155 feels right. And then decision only battle minus 175, Giuseppe plus 125. Pretty interested in that Giuseppe decision only line at
Yeah.
plus money. Plus 145 money line versus plus 125 decision only. That's of interest amongst those two markets we just discussed. I just wanted to echo off of your Nora Cornell pick. So I assume Cavalcante had a massive reach advantage over her. It's just 3 inches. You know, she had a massive reach advantage over Josiane Nunes. And that fight was ultimately a split. I thought Cavalcante kind of won clearly, but that fight was still a month ago, and she took some damage and is now taking this on short notice without the benefit of a camp against a fighter who is not at a significant reach disadvantage, but also won't have to get defensively or won't have to defensively grapple here either. Cornell has had to defend takedowns in both of her first 2 UFC fights. She's just going to get to strike it out here with Cavalcante. She's a hometown fighter. She didn't have to travel. Yeah, Cornell plus 390 by decision, plus 3.5 on the point spread, minus 165. Those both look solid to me. A couple more props I'm interested in. Balaji Oki round 1 knockout at plus 360. This guy cracks hard early. If his opponents cannot take the damage, he's going to knock them out early. He showed that he can kind of pull back on the cardio sustain across 15 minutes to a degree, but he seems more likely in the archetype of a early round 1 finisher. So Balaji Oki against a guy in Chris Duncan who has a bad chin, I think is set up for a highlight reel KO, plus 360 potentially. And then Morgan Charrier, big favorite on the card. I believe the biggest favorite on the card, plus 370 to win round 2, plus 700 to win in round 3. He's going to have to defensively grapple early against Miranda. But if he survives that, I think he's going to put attritional damage on his opponent and eventually finish him in the final 10 minutes. So Charrier live, maybe get a better number. You know, if he's put in a submission attempt early, I doubt that comes into range. But his round 2, round 3 props are the way I would play that fight. Billy, any comments on the Oki and Duncan fight? Any thoughts on the biggest favorite on the card, Morgan Charrier? Any other props you like on this card?
Yeah, I love the Oki line. I think that makes a ton of sense. Chris Duncan, not only not a great chin, but kind of willing to get in there and trade. Charrier, not the heaviest favorite on the card, though. That's Ludovic Klein, who's now
Ah,
like as high as minus 1,200 some places. We got to have one random like 4-digit money line favorite on every UFC card. It's just the law the last couple of years. So that would be Ludovic Klein this time around. Yeah, round 2, round 3 makes sense. I get that one. I see, if you're worried about a guy who's coming in with submission upside, that's likeliest to happen early. If you play it smart, you kind of just ride that out, stay safe, then get aggressive down the stretch. So that makes sense. And yeah, my top prop is the Brito inside the distance, which we already talked on. And then we have a consensus best bet. I got to ask you, though, is this your best bet or is it a final bet?
I think it's a final bet only because doing my handicapping process, it seems like everybody's on Matt Frevola this week. You know, pulling the data I pull, like 60% of all picks, bets, everything was on Matt Frevola. And I don't know why the line is where it is then, because that means some sharp money has to have come in on Ferris DM. But breaking this down, it's clear Frevola for me. He hits harder and he can grapple. And Ferris DM can't really grapple. He can kind of grapple. He's the better technical striker, but Frevola has more ways to win and more finishing upside. Like not only more knockout upside, more submission upside too. So I don't really see where ZM gets the favorite here. Like he needs his upside is winning a competitive split, or not a competitive split, but winning a competitive decision, right? I think Frevola's chin kind of gets too much hate considering the guys he was knocked out by and the ways in which he was knocked out. Like how repetitive is a head kick KO for ZM here? He's not going to starch him like Terrence McKinney. ZM doesn't hit hard. He's pillow hands. He's a point fighter. You know, he's not Armin Sarukian who's going to out-grapple Frevola. Frevola is the one with the grappling upside. So I don't see how you get to favorite on ZM here. Just there's no way for me, other than the fact that I see 60% of people picking, betting, etc. on Frevola, and ZM is the favorite. And I'm like, somebody knows something that I don't. So yeah, do you have a similar read? Like I don't see how Frevola isn't favored.
Yeah, I've thought the same thing all week. I gotta say, Cornole is definitely my actual best bet. Like that's my favorite bet on the card by a pretty wide margin. The only thing I'll say on Frevola is he's another one of these guys. I'm not doubting his cardio in the sense of like how long I think he could run at a decent pace or something. I am doubting his ability to be Matt Frevola for 15 minutes in an MMA fight because he does swing so hard and he does grapple so aggressively. And he doesn't like get technical foot sweeps where he kind of drags you down. When he's getting takedowns, they're big, explosive, draining takedowns. Looks great for the judges, rough on the gas tank. So because of the reasons you're mentioning, and I was surprised to see Frevola in here. I looked at those Tapology community picks and thought, there's no way Zerillo's on Frevola with the rest of the crowd here. I agree with you 100% from a reading the fight side. If you can get ZM at plus 200, plus 250 after a good round one for Matt Frevola, I would probably take it just because of my own hesitation with why this line is what it is. I think Frevola's got way more upside early. I could see him getting tired. You called ZM a point fighter, which is bad in some ways, but it's good in that you can point fight all day. I can point fight 12 rounds right now. I can't be Matt Frevola for more than a couple minutes. So I think it's a good live hedge spot if Frevola doesn't totally kill him early on.
Very fair. Yeah, I think Frevola wins round one at a decently high clip. Yeah, 71% of Tapology votes on Frevola. Typically, when I see it weighted that heavily towards an underdog, I'm never on the underdog. I really like the spot for Frevola. You know, my everything about the read, my breakdown says Frevola, except for the actual way I try to handicap these fights differently than everybody else, which is to look at how it's actually being distributed. I mean, these are 3,000 picks. Like, it's not like, you know, 100 people and 71% of them think it's Frevola. 3,000, that's a substantial sample. That is a statistically sufficient sample. 71% are on Frevola, but it's not just Tapology. It's like everywhere I go, the other resources that are similar to the Tapology votes, it's 60% plus on Frevola. That's very uncommon that I like the underdog when I see that scenario. The other underdog I like, though, and another potential live betting opportunity against the fighter I'm going to bet pre-fight, Daniel Barres plus 110 against Victor Altamirano. I think Barres wins round one at a pretty consistent clip against Altamirano. He hits harder. He's the better striker. He's more physical. Altamirano is bigger and has better cardio and may have the grappling upside. And I think Altamirano, rounds 2, round 3, could definitely take this fight back. But I think Barres, clear value side pre-fight. I think he should be favored. I think he has more finishing upside in the early rounds. And then you could hedge out live on Altamirano. Any thoughts on Barres and Altamirano for you, Billy?
Yeah, that's similar. And just, I think for the listening audience, if you're not going to live bet some of these, I would go a little bit smaller than Sean and I probably are. We're, I think at least, both seeing this as a pretty important live betting card.
Yeah.
Kind of top to bottom, right? There's spots all over where I think the better angles are live. And a lot of these fights, my goal is just to have plus money tickets on both sides. Like, totally agree with you on Barres Altamirano. If we can get plus money on both sides, eke out a slight profit, I will be thrilled with that. Same thing with Frivola. Just a lot of spots like that. So with some of these, if you're not going to be able to do that and don't plan on watching this live at, noon Eastern, which is a tough spot on a Saturday, I would probably hold back a little bit, just knowing that part of our read is knowing that we have a high probability of being able to get both sides.
Absolutely. Yeah. If you're, going to risk a unit on these fighters pre-fight and then try to take a half unit live on the other side, just take the half unit pre-fight and skip the live bet, or vice versa, or not vice versa, but like, generally I'm risking a half unit on a fighter straight money line, no intentional live bet. If I do have an intentional live bet, I might even lower it to a quarter unit. If I'm going to add to their side, I'm going to lower it to a quarter unit pre-fight. If I'm betting against them live, I'm going to reduce the risk probably to half, like I said. So I'll bet, my full stake pre-fight and then half against them live, hopefully at a better number, and try to get profit on both sides, Arbit live, basically. Billy, any other thoughts for this loaded 14 fight card before we get out of here?
I know it's so deep, it's hard to even like keep track of everyone that's on here. I like Ion Cutelaba a little bit, just from he also has some grappling upside here against the UFC newcomer. Prices came back a little bit. So if you can get him at plus money, keep an eye on that one. I think the best right now is even. So that's one more spot that we didn't really touch on. I think both guys have similar, just kind of brawling, striking upside where somebody might fall. One guy also has some grappling upside, and he's a slight underdog. So that's one I'm keeping an eye on. Haven't bet it yet, kind of hoping for a better price just because Eon's looked pretty fragile over the last few fights, which scares me a little bit.
Yeah, I don't even know if he's training anymore either. I don't know how many fights are left on his contract. So definitely a little bit sketched out by the whole Ion Cutelaba situation. I'm normally sketched out by Ion Cutelaba fights. Is Ruslan the kind of guy you would live bet against Cutelaba with?
I don't know, because they both seem to have a similar "we're gonna kill you early" thing.
Yeah.
Like, if you look at Ruslan's record, he's got 10 knockouts, 1 submission, and only 3 decisions. He's not a guy who's typically looking to be around for a long time. Both of his last 2 wins, first round knockouts. His last loss was late first round. So even, not having watched all those fights, that tells me if he doesn't get you in 2-3 minutes, it's almost like the Terrence McKinney thing or something. So I would not touch this one live betting on either side. Just zero trust in either guy's cardio.
Just wanted to circle back to the Ludovic Klein fight, because you brought it up in the context of me saying Charrier was the biggest favorite on the card. I actually like the same angle. I like Klein rounds 2 and round 3 at very similar prices as Charrier. Klein is not like a one-punch KR. He's more of an attritional finisher. He's a guy who's going to throw in combinations. He really likes to set up that high head kick. And Roberts is kind of dangerous for a round, so I would consider betting Klein to win in rounds 2 and rounds 3 at a bigger, juicier price. I think plus 350, plus 600 respectively. And in a similar range as Charrier, rounds 2 and rounds 3. And I think with that, I believe, aside from the Taylor Lapillus Morales fight, I think we touched all 14 fights on this card. So hopefully you enjoy UFC Paris. That'll do it for a UFC betting preview on the Action Network's YouTube channel. You can find more UFC betting content from myself and from Billy Ward on actionnetwork.com. Make sure to download the free award-winning Action Network app. And if you haven't already subscribed to Action Pro, you can get $20 off using code POD20. You'll get projections for all of our sports and receive quicker bet notifications from all of our Action Network experts. Best of luck with all of your bets this weekend. I hope you enjoy the violence. Thank you for listening. We'll see you back here next week for UFC 307, Alex Poatan Pereira against Khalil Roundtree, and Raquel Pennington against Juliana Pena for the women's bantamweight title. Enjoy the violence, as I said. We'll see you next time.